Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. This week sees us back in Antwerp, but this time at one of the most highly rated attractions in the city itself, at the Cathedral of Our Lady. When exploring the city, you can spot the imposing tower of the cathedral in the distance. It's the highest church tower in Belgium, rising 123 metres above the historic city centre. In the Middle Ages, the Cathedral of Antwerp was situated inside the city centre, amongst narrow and cobbled streets and gorgeous crooked houses. It was built between the 14th and 16th century, making it the largest Gothic church in the Low Countries. The foundation of the cathedral was actually laid in the 10th century, but in between the 10th and 12th century, a small chapel was rebuilt into a Romanesque church. This church comprised of 5 aisles, 2 of which were added at a later date. Between the years of 1350 and 1520, this church was then rebuilt into the splendid and impressive Gothic building that is now known as Antwerp Cathedral of Our Lady. In 1553, the church was sadly damaged, largely by a roaring fire. After some extensive restoration, the church was granted the status of a cathedral in 1559. Between the years of 1566 and 1581, the iconoclasm that coincided with the rise of the Protestant Reformation further made damage to the church. Iconoclasm is a medieval Greek, and it means to break the social belief in the importance of the destruction of icons and other images or monuments, most frequently for religious or political reasons. The church was plundered several times in the years to come, and its interior was destroyed. After Antwerp's return to Catholicism, it was then restored in the Baroque style, and Peter Paul Rubens provided exceptional paintings to redecorate the now bare walls of the cathedral. 2 of the artworks during the Napoleonic reign were confiscated and moved to France, but were later returned to the cathedral in the 19th century. In World War I, the Imperial German Army stole both paintings, and they were then taken to Berlin Palace, which they stayed until Armistice Day, November the 11th of 1918, upon being returned yet again to Antwerp. Today, as you enjoy the interior, you can see the combination of Romanesque, Gothic, Baroque and Neo-Gothic styles classically portrayed. The art inside ranges from medieval wall paintings that are so impressive to Baroque masterpieces by Rubens and 19th century paintings. Although the cathedral has undergone many changes throughout its time, when its foundations were laid in the 15th century, the medieval origins still are visible throughout. In the Middle Ages, the church interiors were once painted in bright colours. Rare examples of this can be found near the entrance to the sacristy, on the south side of the church, dating back to the 15th century. Having been hidden under layers of later wall decorations, these medieval wall paintings were revealed in the 20th century. Some of them were remarkably only discovered 20 years ago, such as a fragment of the depiction of the Man of Sorrows. Near the Mary Chapel on the north side of the cathedral, you are able to find a 14th century statue of Mary and Jesus. This statue is attributed to the anonymous master of the Marsland marble Madonnas, who worked in the Belgian city of Liège around 1350. Mary's gracious attitude, the flowing folds of her crown, and the serene expression on her face really reflects the courtly culture of the 14th century. The cathedral is one of the highlights of the Netherlandish Gothic style, with intricate stone lacework and high spires. It's worth paying special attention to the medieval ribbed vaults in the aisles. They support the high Gothic windows, and they show grace and the sensation of the unmeasurable height to the church. The 4 paintings by local artist Peter Paul Rubens are often the main draw for visitors to Antwerp Cathedral. Some of these works include the painting above the main altar, 2 large triptych altars, and a smaller altar that was painted for a private tomb. Antwerp was past its economic peak by the early 17th century, but it still experienced an artistic golden age at the start of the Baroque, which meant a major role was played in the counter-Reformation in the city, as it did in many parts of Europe. Bearing history in mind, it's good to start with the youngest of Rubens' painting, named the Assumption of the Virgin, hanging in the choir above the main altar. The Protestant and Dutch Protestants in particular were against church art to start off with, but with such a theme such as the Assumption of the Virgin, it was a story not in the Christian Bible, but it was popular with Roman Catholics. It was enough to get the Protestants back up. Next is the Raising of the Cross, but it's also known as the Elevation of the Cross, which is the oldest and biggest painting by Rubens, currently inside Antwerp Cathedral. This was originally painted for the main altar of St. Walburgis Church in Antwerp, but this church has since been destroyed with the Rubens altar inside the cathedral since 1816. It is now currently in the north transept. The third painting is the Descent from the Cross, painted by Rubens in 1611 to 1614. It is usually considered artistically the most accomplished work by him inside the cathedral. It is more classical than the Elevation of the Cross. It is considered a paragon of the Baroque genre. The fourth of Rubens' work is much smaller, but biblically speaking, of much more of an important event, the resurrection of Christ. This painting was made for the married couple Jan Moretus and Martina Plantin, from the family of printing fame at the nearby museum Plantin Moretus. The central panel shows Christ emerging alive from his tomb, to the shock of the Roman soldiers. Then the side panels feature John the Baptist and St. Martina, who are the patron saints of the Plantin Moretus couple. These masterpieces truly are special and worth your time to experience and depict yourself. We also went to the printing press of Moretus, so please stay tuned for that soon, upcoming in a video. The cathedral has an amazing set of choir stalls, built in the 19th century, which lines both sides of the central aisles, and a pulpit, built by Michael van der Voort, that had been in the cathedral since 1804, which was actually destined for St Bernard Abbey in Hemexem, but was kept here since. What we didn't realise is that there's a small crypt underground, accessed by a small spiral staircase, which houses around 4 to 5 tombs, all empty, but an interesting find that we stumbled across. These were laid out more like an archaeological dig, with barely enough room for movement, and all exhumed. But an interesting stop-off on your visit to imagine just how many other burial tombs are below the cathedral itself. The interior of the Cathedral of Our Lady is open from 10 AM to 5 PM on weekdays, 10 AM to 3 PM on Saturdays, and 1 PM to 4 PM on Sundays and public holidays. Be sure to check the website for these hours, as they may vary if any services or events are happening. The price of €6 for adults, and children under 12 is free, is definitely worth it for the amount of culture, religion, art and inner peace you will soak up during your visit. Be sure to take a leaflet when you enter to gain more of an understanding of the various places to visit within the cathedral. These altars by Peter Paul Rubens largely account for the large number of Japanese visitors to Antwerp Cathedral. These Rubens altars play an important role in A Dog of Flanders too, a 19th century book by English author Mary Louise. The story became hugely popular in Japan through manga, television and films, but in the novel it centres around the lives of a young orphan boy named Nello, who was an aspiring painter and joined at the hip by his dog Patrice. The scene of A Dog in Flanders follows a desperate Nello who, after being wrongly accused of causing a fire in his village, heads to the cathedral in Antwerp to see and experience his idol Rubens and his paintings of the elevation of the cross. However, he was out of money and unable to see the artwork. On Christmas Eve, Nello and his dog stayed at the cathedral, where they found the doors left wide open. The next morning, the boy and his dog are discovered frozen to death underneath his favourite artist's painting. The tragic ending inspired more than a few fans over to Antwerp, but there was nothing dedicated to the story in the country, as well as most people were even unaware of its international popularity. Most recordings of the story, especially in the USA, use a happier ending, but in Japan the original resonates well. During the 1980s, Antwerp finally introduced a small statue of a boy and his dog to a suburb of Antwerp where the novel is believed to have been set. And now we can see and experience the marble statue just outside of the cathedral itself, depicting Nello's last moments with his loyal best friend Patrice, covered up by a cobblestone blanket, forever together. So that's it for this video. We want to say a big thank you for watching and hope that you will take a visit here if you're ever in Antwerp City. If you enjoyed the video today, please be sure to hit that like button, click the notification bell and consider clicking the subscribe button for more content. We want to say a big thank you to our supporters here on the channel. If you are interested in supporting us, we have a Patreon and channel memberships here on YouTube. Give the join button a click and find out more. So we'll see you on the next one. Till next time.